Welcome back to another episode of the QB Spotlight podcast. As always, I've got my QB guru, the man who you come to for college football quarterbacking insight, Mr. Stephen Hamner. I am Eric Henry, SB Nation FIU beat writer, co-managing editor of Underdog Dynasty. Steve, how's it going, man? I know it has been a unique week and a half for you down there in the Lone Star State. First and foremost, before we launch into the QBs we're going to talk about today and the topics we're going to talk about today, and always thank you for the questions. We did get a couple questions that we'll address off the top. How are you doing down there, man? I see you rocking the Montana Grizzlies shirt, but dude, how have you been like, man? First and foremost, everyone okay?
Yeah, so we're all good. Montana brought down some weather to us that we're not used to, but luckily we kept power. We were without water for a little bit, but man, it's been people around us, still no power, still no water. So it's pretty crazy. It's like, being in Florida, it's like when a hurricane hits, the aftermath is pretty, crazy to build up. So it's kind of like that right now. Plumbers backed up. But we are good. We're safe. Family's good. Family's safe. Just a lot of people that without power and without water. But things are getting back and getting normal. So it's 70 degrees right now. And this time last week, it was like 1 degree, like freezing and just snow, like record low temperatures throughout Texas, record high snowfall throughout Texas. So it was crazy as well. But as always, thanks for checking in. Eric was checking in on me too, guys. So he did a good job making sure it's okay. So we appreciate that.
No, man, definitely want to make sure you and the fam are all right down there. Really quick, you said that people around you are still without some power and stuff?
Yeah, like people so we're in the Austin area, but people like all throughout Central Texas still don't have power and water. And a lot of people won't have water for a while just because pipes busted. And so they had to, put a cap on it. And I don't know what they're doing with water, staying with friends, relatives. So our area around here has recovered nicely. But they're still like walking around, you'll still see like blocks of ice just in people's backyards from the pipes busting and rushing out because they weren't home and they weren't able to stop it. But we seem to be in the uptrend, so we seem to be improving. So hopefully you can, keep bouncing back. We're from Texas, Eric. We bounce back,
No doubt about it. Once again, want to send our thoughts to everyone out there in Texas. Glad Steve is doing all right. Before we launch into the questions and quarterbacks we're going to talk about today, as always, you can find us on various podcasting platforms, primarily Apple Podcasts. Just search QB Spotlight. And Steve, where can you find this podcast as well?
So you can go to NFLDraftDiamonds.com. They do a great job putting out draft stuff for smaller schools, whether it's Group of 5, FCS, D2, D3, and they put our YouTube channel out, and they also put our podcast out. And you can also find them at Draft Diamonds on Twitter, and then you can go to Podbean, which is our podcast host, and they are we load the podcast on them, and then they put it to Apple and all that fancy stuff that's over my head. But if you're interested in making a podcast, they do a great job, and we'll have links below if you're interested in checking them out. Boom, ad done. I'm getting decent at it, Eric, but off my head.
And one last thing, we promise again, we are not selling out. We're not corporate sellouts. Just got a few things we got to plug here before we get into the content. Steve, where can they find you on YouTube, sir?
YouTube is going to be our YouTube channel is just QB Spotlight, and we put out all QB content from what me and Eric talk about to Power 5 quarterbacks, to even some draft coverage too. But we don't leave the Group of 5 out. We're still focusing and emphasizing those guys, making sure they get covered. But at the same time, we're kind of covering a more broad base. And we just started a few weeks ago, and it's growing pretty well. So we're just going to see what happens. You can find this podcast on YouTube too. So we're just taking our next steps. So.
Now that the formalities are out of the way, I promise, this time next year, me and Steve, we're going to be like the Homer Simpson meme where we're like bathed in like jewelry and coins and gold, with all the ads, but it's a work in progress, So.
That's right.
Now that we got that out of the way, going to jump into some of the Twitter questions we got. Got a shout out to our guy, Joe Broback, who does a phenomenal job covering college football. He is a college football content curator as well. You can find him on Twitter at Joe Broback. That is Joe, J-O-E, Broback, B-R-O-B-A-C-K. Find him at UDD, and his podcast is CFB with a JB. Now, his question. What do you both think about Darryl Mack at ODU? For those of you who may not be familiar, Darryl Mack, better known as, AKA, I should say, shouldn't say better known, AKA DJ Mack. No, it was the former UCF quarterback who started the 2018. Yeah, because we had 2 years of Dylan Gabriel. 2018 American Conference title game was the AAC Conference title game player of the game, as MVP, as a matter of fact, had a huge game. He's something like 340 yards passing. I think he rushed for 4 touchdowns. I covered that game at Spectrum Stadium. He is making his way to ODU. He is a Norfolk native, so he's going back home. Steve, big kid, 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds. When you see him, the natural comparison is like the Cam Newton type, even though Cam is probably 6'6", just goes to show you how big Cam Newton is, right? But very athletic guy, has a strong arm, definitely, a raw talent. We saw a little bit of what he could do. He started the Fiesta Bowl against LSU. Also, they lost that game. But Steve, what do you see from DJ Mack in terms of that question? And then I want to transition to my own question regarding DJ Mack and his fit with ODU. Why don't you take away with Roback's question first?
Yeah, so I think as far as so just to make sure I got the question right, do you want me to go into detail as far as how he fits with ODU system right now, or just?
Well, I'll read Joe's question verbatim. It's, what do you both think about how Darryl Mack will do at Old Dominion?
Okay. So I think me and you both agree he's going to have pretty stiff competition. Now he's probably got a little more. He's got more experience, more big time games than Hayden Wolf, but he is going to have some stiff competition. But regardless, he's probably going to see playing time, even if he doesn't win right off the bat. But let's say he does win, and let's say he does. Just for the sake of the question, let's say he wins the job. I think you're going to see what you saw in the game against Memphis, the American, the AAC championship, a few years ago back, and I think what you saw there was once he got comfortable and once he got settled in, he was actually able to not just run the ball, but throw the ball, right? And so, yes, he's a big athlete. He's a good runner, but I think we lose sight. Like, he can throw the ball well too. Even the bowl game against Marshall, I mean, you both that he actually had some good.
That's Roll Bowl.
Yeah, and so the difference whenever they played LSU was he just couldn't get in a rhythm, and his completion percentage was probably like under 50%. So I think his biggest thing is coming in, getting in a rhythm, using his legs to help open up the pass game, which I know we'll get to in a little more detail here in a bit. But I think he is going to be a good fit with that system and what ODU's new head coach brings.
So it's interesting, Steve, something you mentioned, you talk about him having more experience than maybe Hayden Wolf or Stone Smart, and not calling out my QB guru, but believe it or not, that's not exactly the case. I mean, it just goes to show you how young both quarterbacks are. If you look at Stone Smart, who I believe started 5 games in 2019, it was him and Messiah DeWeaver at ODU, but believe it or not, what's up?
Did Wolf end up playing more than Mack? Did he have more games started?
No, believe it or not. Remember, DJ Mack coming into 2019 was going to battle out with Dylan Gabriel, but then he broke his ankle playing pickup basketball. So by the time he recovered, that was Dylan Gabriel's job. DJ Mack only has 2 starts to his name, which is the AAC title game and then the Fiesta Bowl. Hayden Wolf started 3 out of the final 4 games in 2019. So believe it or not, Hayden Wolf actually has more quote-unquote experience than DJ Mack, but of course, Mack is a more veteran player. I believe Mack will be a redshirt junior entering this year, whereas Hayden Wolf, a redshirt sophomore, and of course hasn't played in a live game in over a year, right? So really quick, before we transition to maybe DJ Mack's fit in Ricky Rahne's system, I do think it's fair we should at least talk about Hayden Wolf really quickly so our listeners have an idea of who we're talking about, what the comparison is. Hayden Wolf, big kid, 6'5". At last time I saw him, I actually saw his first career start against FIU, probably about 200 pounds, maybe 205. Your prototypical traditional pocket passer, was recruited by the old coach Bobby Wilder. The thing that impressed me most about him, was that was a 1-11 team that he came in and started on, and he toughed it out in his first start against a really talented FIU team. The second thing that impressed me is I believe he had 61 attempts. I cannot remember who the opponent was. It was his final start of 2019. And when you put a true freshman in there and tell him sling it 61 times, that means you got some confidence in him. And he, if you look at the 2019 ODU Monarchs, was the most effective passer they had. So really quick, just want to get your thoughts on Hayden Wolf before we transition into Max fit and Ricky Rahne's system, what they're looking to do at ODU.
Yeah, I think with Hayden Wolf, because you're right, I remember that game when he threw 60-something times. I think I don't remember his exact numbers, his exact stats, but he was definitely up there. So a big kid, not the athlete that Mack is, but probably has, if not a stronger arm, the exact same arm strength as DJ Mack, I would imagine, but definitely more of a traditional passer. But if I remember correctly, I think he can move better than what you would think from a sneaky guy, right? I think he actually had a decent amount of plays on the ground against FIU. Maybe not so much rushing yards, but just buying time, scrambling a little bit. And so they are different quarterbacks, but I know we're going to get to this question in a second. I think they can both fit in ODU's offense. And I think Ricky Rahne can both make them fit in that offense, as he's shown historically. I know we're going to jump in there in a second, so I don't want to jump too far ahead. But different skill sets, but both can still fit ODU.
Yes, really quick. Let me go on. I just want to pull up Hayden Wolf's stat line. That first start, he started 3 games in November, so it was a late season stretch down there for ODU. 19 of 35 for $169 and 1 pick. Again, you're talking ODU team that was not very good. They really couldn't run the ball either. So take those stats into account with that situation. The next week, this is obviously pre-COVID, when you could play back-to-back football games instead of missing 3 or 4 weeks at a time. 7 days later, he went 17 of 29 for 247, a touchdown and an interception in a loss to UTSA. And then the game that he threw 65 times, 39 of 65 for 321, which is a game that really impressed me. 1 touchdown, 1 pick in a loss to Middle Tennessee State. So those were his numbers there. So now let's go and take a look, transition into Ricky Rahne's system, the incoming head coach, former Penn State offensive coordinator. Ricky Rahne is looking to, and Steve, you can go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong here. His system is based in the RPO principles. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And I'll let you take it away. When you look at Ricky Rahne's system and the RPO principles, can you go back to kind of his time at Penn State and some of the quarterbacks who had success, maybe some of the things that they were able to do, as far as athletically speaking?
So I think the best way to break that down is let's look at Joe Moorhead, who was the OC before Ricky Rahne, and Ricky Rahne was quarterbacks coach, then was the tight ends coach under
Correct.
Moorhead. Right. And so I think he was able to learn a lot from Joe Moorhead. Trace McSorley's junior years when he had his big year running and throwing, and then of course Moorhead goes to Mississippi State. Ricky Rahne takes over, and while the quarterback numbers were down just a little bit, the running game improved a ton. So he didn't have to rely on the quarterback as much. But now there's still other RPO schemes, RPO principles, and he wants the quarterback to be able to run, which Trace McSorley of course did. But when you have Saquon Barkley, sometimes the best thing to do is just give him the ball, even if it's not the right read, right? And then let's fast forward to Sean Clifford, was the quarterback in Ricky Rahne's last year's OC, I believe. And he's not the runner that Trace McSorley is, but is definitely a better athlete than what you would think. But he's not the thrower either that McSorley is either. So I think Ricky Rahne was, I don't want to say limited by the quarterback position, but I still think he hasn't hit his stride yet as far as a complete package quarterback that fits his system. Another example I want to talk about real quick is actually Christian Hackenberg, because he was actually the quarterback's coach when Hackenberg was a quarterback at Penn State, but 14 something.
Around there.
And so obviously Hackenberg, was an NFL bust and didn't, blow people away in college, but nonetheless, he was still a 2nd-round draft pick. He still had a fine college career, and Ricky Rahne was still able to develop him in college a little bit. And so I think where that comes into play is the fact Ricky Rahne has developed pro-style quarterbacks like Christian Hackenberg, and he's helped develop Trace McSorley, who's more of an athlete, and Sean Clifford, who is a hybrid, if you will, who can run and throw. So I think that bodes well for not only Matt, because Matt can fit that RPO system extremely well, but also Hayden Wolf. Say if Hayden Wolf just looks sharper and better, well, Ricky Rahne has tools and has a system where he can surround Hayden Wolf and put him in a situation to be successful without doing as many RPO specific schemes with the quarterback leading it.
All right, so I want to pick up right where you left off right there. Yeah. Final question here as far as the ODU quarterback situation. 2-part question. 1, I want you to explain to listeners who may or may not know, but for those who don't know, explain what the key is if you're as a quarterback in running the RPO system in terms of what you're looking to read on a play. And the second part of that question, how much, because personally speaking, I think a lot gets made out of having the athletic guy in an RPO, right? Because obviously the R is the run, right? And if you have an athletic quarterback, that obviously presents a different dynamic than maybe a guy who isn't quite as athletic. But the second part of that question is this. How crucial is it to have someone who can run? Now, I'm not saying it's to be elusive. How crucial to someone that can run? Essentially, do you need to have that dynamic athlete in order to A, run the RPO to probably its T, and the second question, to have them respect the quarterback run games? I know I threw a lot out you there. So, first part of that question, just explain to our listeners what the quarterback's looking to read there on that RPO, right? When you're running that offense.
So depending on the call, the RPO will depend on what you're reading. Usually the quarterback is going to read So if you're watching this on YouTube, you have, one of the defensive ends or outside linebackers. If my running back is, I'm just doing a handoff here, I'm looking at the opposite defensive end or linebacker, and if I can see his numbers, that means he's coming towards me. I'm probably going to hand the ball off. If I see his shoulder pads, I can't see his numbers, I'm going to keep it. And then depending on what's going on after that, I'll usually have an option to throw it behind that linebacker or that D end, depending on what the defensive front is, or I can keep it depending if the linebacker goes with the receiver, but the defensive end crushes in. So essentially I have two reads. One, the first read is, okay, am I handing the ball up or am I keeping it? The second read is, okay, I kept it, so am I going to keep it and run it or pass it? Does that kind of make sense? So
No, you're sure.
You have two reads. And if you hand the ball off, of course, you only have one read. But essentially you have two reads, and you're basically just trying to get a defender on an island and make him make him have a lose-lose situation, which goes into the second part question. While, yes, you want an athletic quarterback, a more dynamic athletic quarterback is going to make that RPO system a lot better, 100%. But at the same time, I would have a decent athlete who's smarter and more efficient that's going to make that better. Let's take Joe Burrow, for example, who we talked about. They did a lot of RPO schemes. While Burrow is not a great athlete, he's a decent athlete, 4.7-ish type 40. He has enough speed to make you pay, but he's not going to outrun a SEC DB or even an SEC linebacker. But he's so smart and efficient with it. He knew when to pull, he knew when to throw, and he knew when to hand off. So I think being smart and efficient will trump being a dynamic athlete. Although it definitely does not hurt to be a dynamic quarterback whenever you are running the RPO scheme.
All right. Thank you for that answer. So the reason I wanted to do that, really dive, to have that deep dive into the RPO and what the offense kind of rooted in, is because I know there's some people who think that, all right, you bring in DJ Mack, Hayden Wolf, not a Ricky Rahne guy. It's a foregone conclusion that Hayden Wolf will be out of this competition, right? But as you explained, sure, you can't be, Peyton Manning back there per se, but if you have enough athleticism that they at least respect, quote unquote, the ability for the quarterback to tuck it, then you're still able to do a lot of your RPO principles. And as you mentioned, if you look at, let's go the team I cover, FIU, James Morgan, I'm not going to say the offense was rooted in RPO, but they did have a lot of, kind of read type plays out of the shotgun where, James would read that defensive end. He's going to give it to the running back, or he's going to, pull it and kind of do his own thing, whether that's, pass or whatever. But it's the smarts. If you can read it and make your decision quickly, you can still run that offense.
Exactly.
So, is that a fair assessment, Steve?
Yes, that's a great point about James Morgan too. Yes.
All right. So the second question we got, and don't worry, Broback, and come back to your next question, is from Philip. On Twitter, he is at Philip12Tribes. He asked a question about Liberty quarterback Malik Willis. Thoughts on Malik Willis' position? He says 2022, I think meant the 2021 NFL draft. As someone who I had a chance to see play live twice, and what a stud, definitely a dynamic player. Want to hear your thoughts on maybe Malik Willis and what you see from him as far as his pro potential.
Yeah, so I think Malik Willis has the potential to be a first-round draft pick. Like,
time out.
Yes, hands down.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. This is you guys come here for Stephen Hamner's.
Let me explain,
not mine.
Let me explain though, and here's why. Because I think he actually is right. I think it was the 2022 draft because he'll be back playing this year.
Oh, I'm completely blank. You're correct.
We're in 2021 now. 2020 is behind us, bro. Let's leave.
I'm complete. You're completely correct. He is a junior. He has one more year left. That is correct. That is correct. I'm sorry.
Here's a few reasons why before I get into his ability as a quarterback. Let's just look who's coming out this year at the quarterback position. We have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach. What's the BYU? Zach
Wilson.
Yeah. Trey Lance from North Dakota State, Mac Jones from Alabama. Those are pretty much your top 5 guys, and all of them are being talked about being a first-round pick, right? So this is like the heavy quarterback year. It seems like every year is a heavy quarterback year, but off the top of my head, I can't think of the number 1 quarterback next year that's going to be in the draft, right? Unless I'm probably just blanking, but off the top of my head,
go for it. Yeah.
Maybe the OU kid, Spencer Rattler, but
Spencer Rattler.
But anyway, so the fact this is a quarterback-heavy year and Malik Willis is in his wheelhouse. I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round pick, but potentially.
No. Yeah, you're saying the talent.
Yeah, the talent is there, and the way the stars are kind of lining up is there as well. For that to happen, though, he needs to have another big year like he had this year. Because if Zach Wilson is getting first-round pick buzz, and he has the talent, there's no reason why Malik Willis shouldn't get first-round or top pick buzz either. Malik Willis's arm is going to be A+. His athletic ability is A+. His ability to move in the pocket is A+. Maybe I'm too high on, but man, I'm already sold. However, he needs to have another year like he did this past year at Liberty. It can't be a drop off. It has to be the exact same or even better. And if it is better, especially with Hugh Freeze's system, and especially the way the NFL is translating like more of the college game to the NFL, that also bodes well for him. So I think the talent is 100% there. Remember, he was a big time recruit going to Auburn. Like, he was a dude.
Absolutely.
But now I think he's in a better place to get drafted at Liberty than he would have been if he won the job at Auburn. So I think he's got a lot of potential. Will he be a first-round pick? I'm not going to predict that. But I think the stars are lined that way, and I think the potential is there. And yeah, you probably hear my voice. I'm excited.
You're fired up. I know you're fired up. Really quick, arm strength. You see the arm strength there with Malik Willis?
100% there.
Okay.
No doubt about it. Yes.
Some of the guys who may be eligible in 2022, as far as the quarterback room.
Yep. Spencer
Rattler, Sam Howell, Jaden Daniels, Keaton Slovis. So Malik Willis would be right there. Just really quick, to run off Malik Willis' stats. And again, like I said, I had a chance to see him play live. He had an excellent game against FIU in week 1, and then he put that team on his back in the Cure Bowl. I always forget the name of that bowl game. It's the Cure Bowl against Coastal Carolina. Folks, if you want to see a great college football game, go back and watch a matchup of two great Liberty's not a quote-unquote G5, but two teams that aren't Power 5. I mean, phenomenal game against Coastal, 19-29, 210. He had 2 picks. One of them wasn't his fault. I remember that one was a tip, but 21 carries for $137 and 4 touchdowns. Against FIU, 21 carries for $168, 3 touchdowns. I'm just looking at his numbers here. I see he went over the 300-yard mark twice. He did it against Southern Miss, 24-31 for 345 and 6 touchdowns, and Western Carolina 14-19, 306, 3 TDs. So definitely, like you said, needs to have another year to build on it. But okay, noted on Malik Willis. And hey, Philip, thank you for that question.
Yes,
keep them coming. Real appreciate it. Broback has one final question here. Who benches more between myself and Steve Hamner? Steve, I'll let you take away first, sir.
So I'm going to say 100% in Eric's prime. Eric does. Eric is built to be successful in the bench press. If y'all don't know him, he's got that strong safety built, 5'8", 5'9". Probably when he was in his prime, 210, 215. Probably guessing right just by knowing your structure and it being my job. Just look at people and know that. And he had those powerful arms. I can see him tucking his elbows. I was a quarterback, moved to safety. Bench was not my strong suit. However, my 225 test was that 15, 16-ish range. So it wasn't like a slouch. I could still put it up. And I would say Eric for sure in his prime. Right now, I don't know how much he bench presses. He's a big-time military press guy. For y'all to know.
This guy's hilarious.
So I would say if I can bench press more Eric, it would be right now, but definitely not in his prime.
Okay. So I guess this begs the question, Steve. What would you say if he's your max 1 rep on the bench, sir? And once again, for those before, those make their own assumptions. Steve works in fitness. He is a sports performance specialist. He trains professional athletes. He is. This is his field. But with that disclaimer, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Right now it's low 3s. Like it's nothing impressive. I'm a 30-year-old dad, so it's like 305 probably. Nothing impressive.
I want to state for a disclaimer that this is for entertainment purposes only, and I would never gamble. Steve, you name your price. You put up 310. You name your price.
Am I putting up 310?
Yeah, you're putting up 310. Name your price.
Oh man, like how much I get if I put 310?
You name. Listen, I don't think you're putting up 310. So you name what's at stake. While you're thinking, I just did 345 last week. I got no shot. So I'm gonna guess
a quarterback.
No. Right. This is fair. This is fair, right? And I did that 345 after about 60 something reps of bench. I was doing kind of like a bench type burnout, whereas building and whatnot. Some like bench thing I saw on Instagram. I figured I'd try it out. So I'd say about 380, probably 1 rep max. Well, but now you've had time to think, Steve. Listen, I'm not doubting Steve's physical strength, right? I've actually seen Steve in the gym. When he's humble with the Montana shirt on, but when he throws on the sleeveless hoodie, Steve's got guns himself. But 310. For a guy who's probably about $140,
Oh man, Eric's got jokes today. Okay, I'm gonna remember this. Him and his Eric's in the gym listening to Flow Rider and Trick Back and all this stuff, but we don't want Houston rap. We don't want him to listen to Houston rap. 310, I probably won't get right now.
Okay.
I'm probably 300-ish.
Okay. I mean, we'll we can take this off here. We got plenty of QB stuff to get into besides this. So, Broback, we appreciate the question. Really, as we'll transition into some of our topics today, we want to go ahead and rank the quarterback play as far as the G5 leagues, American, CUSA, Mountain West, Sun Belt, as it relates to quarterbacks heading into spring. Steve, what conference you want to start with?
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do real quick, and then I'm gonna have you, because I know I think you're gonna disagree with me here. So I'm gonna go down kind of my rankings going into spring, explain why, and then you can go. And then I want you to go through yours and explain why.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, this could, like, a lot of it is speculation. So if you are into the market, and you want to throw some money into it, it's good to buy low, right? So I think the number one quarterback conference heading into the spring is the Mountain West. Okay, I know people are probably going to think it's the American, and while I think you could argue that they have the top 2 quarterbacks in all of G5, I think as we're talking conference as a whole, the Mountain West is going to be a bit stronger heading into spring. You got Hake Bachmeyer, Nick Starkel, Carson Strong, Chevin Cordeiro from Hawaii, and then we got Jake Haener from Fresno. Those are all solid quarterbacks. We got Logan Bonner transferring to Utah State, who's a proven transfer. San Diego State has a transfer to Mississippi State. That's a speculation kind of play. And then the rest are kind of guys you want to that are still looking for their starting quarterback. Second, I'm going with the Sun Belt. Okay. Sun Belt, we got Grayson McCall from Coastal, Cornelius Brown from Georgia State. We got Gunnar Watson from Troy. We have Levi Lewis from Louisiana, Lane Hatcher from Arkansas State, and Brady McBride, Texas State, Desmond Trotter, South Alabama. So you could make that their number one, honestly, heading into the spring, especially with the transfer. They got some solid transfers too. Taylor Powell from Mizzou is transferring to Troy, so he's going to be competition with Gunnar Watson. We got James Blackman from Florida State to Arkansas State adding competition. Jake Bitley from Utah to South Alabama. So we have some solid transfers coming in. After that, I'm going the American, because Desmond Ridder and Dylan Gabriel may be the 2 best quarterbacks in all of the group of 5. You can make that argument. But however, I think after them, there's a little bit of a drop-off. I like Michael Pratt a lot. I think he's got a good chance. He had a great freshman year. Clayton Tune, if he can take the next steps, and then Holton Ahlers, if he can take the next step as well, can be solid dudes. I think the American has the potential to be the best group of 5 conference there is. But going into the spring, I put them number 3 because there's a lot of speculation. We have SMU with a new transfer, Memphis new transfer, South Florida new transfer, Temple new transfer. So they have potential to be the best, but a lot of speculation. And then last but and least right now is going to be Conference USA. We got Grant Wells, Frank Harris is probably your top 2 guys coming back. Chris Reynolds, but he's going to be in competition with James Foster. And then we have speculation transfers at Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky, UNT, Rice, Southern Miss. So they could be better, but until they actually prove it's just speculation.
All right, so I will pick up where Steve, leaves off there. I have no problem putting Conference USA, the league I cover, 4th. The fact of the matter is, the Grant Wells, Frank Harris, like you said, those are your top 2. Chris Reynolds may be in a quarterback competition with James Foster. We'll see. The rest of the league, I mean, you run it down. Western Kentucky, listen, both of us are buying high on Bailey Zappi, but you got to see it. Middle Tennessee, Bailey Hockman, got to see it, right? With UNT, Austin Ani, you got to see what their quarterback situation is. Rice, come on, the kids. This is what happens when I get off season. Hang on. Mike Collins from TCU.
They got a new transfer too.
They did get a new transfer too, but I'm buying. If I think that offense, if it's going to run, it's going to go through Mike Collins, because I think he played well in 2020 enough in the brief showing of the games that Rice had. Southern Miss, we'll have to see what happens there as far as their quarterback situation. Trey Lowe, see what Will Hall, almost said Will Healy, what Will Hall will do there. And UTEP, a guy, Gavin Hardison, that's a guy who we think good size, definitely has some playmaking ability, but again, we got to see UTEP actually beat a team that's decent. So there's that. I actually am really high on the Sun Belt, maybe because I saw Grayson McCall firsthand. Definitely high on Levi Lewis, Lane Hatcher, Brady McBride, Desmond Trotter as well. That's a guy who, we'll have to go and see what happens there. As far as McBride and Texas State, that's one that I think has the potential to be interesting, right? Because even that entire Texas State program as a whole. Steve, do you know how many wins Texas State had last year?
I think 2, right?
You're correct. They went 2-10. Now, if that was a team that when they played on national TV, it looked really good.
Yeah.
And they had the showdown game against who did they?
UTSA. It was like
UTSA. There we go. It was UTSA.
48 or something like that, right? Like it was
right. And you go back, it's like, wait a minute. He only had 2 wins last year.
Yeah.
Let's see what Jake Spavital is able to do there. I actually am maybe a little higher on the American than you are. I'll put Mountain West second. You're a big Hank Bachmeier guy. I am as well. I saw his first career start against Florida State, and where he got beat up and hung in there as able to come back and win at Dilt Campbell. I believe that was the kind of the beginning of the end of the Willie Taggart era at Florida State there. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm a little higher on the American. Definitely as far as Dylan Gabriel, I think Michael Pratt is due for a breakout year. I shouldn't say due. I think he's up for a breakout year as a true sophomore. Clayton Tune. I am buying, I think, the weapon here, the secret weapon. It's now or never. Holton Ahlers. We've seen it in spurts. We've seen it in bits.
Yep.
What can necessarily, or what is going to happen there as far as this, this year and his potential? Really quick, I want to ask you about Temple's QB situation. This is just me spitballing here really quick. Who was the transfer they got offhand? I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
Dwayne Mathis from Georgia. And
right. Dwayne, okay.
So Arkansas got benched.
Right. So you have him. How do you feel about Real Mitchell?
As far as I know, he's still there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We can go back and amend this otherwise, but to the best of my recollection, he's still. I believe Real Mitchell got the start against UCF because of COVID. COVID situation. But just what are your thoughts on him? Just really quickly.
I really don't have I know he was a good athlete, and I think he, bad circumstance where in high school he was benched for the number 1 quarterback in the nation. So be it, right?
QB1 fans, you guys know that.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I think with the American, I just think, and it sounds like you're banking on the speculation that they're all going to turn out, which is fair because they do the transfers they have coming in are top quality transfers. So that's why I said the potential to be number 1 is there for sure in my opinion too.
Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot here really quickly, right? So I'll let you go ahead and pick. I won't ask. I'm going to let you pick. Out of the 4 leagues here, what quarterback situation do you believe, or it could be a handful, 2, 3, I won't limit to just one, has the biggest boom or bust potential?
Ooh, man. So, okay, if it was going into 2020, I would say Desmond Ridder in Cincinnati, but he kind of boomed last year, right? As we said, and boom or bust, man, that is good. Man, okay. I would say, just off the top of my head, Arkansas State might have it, just for the simple fact you have Lane Hatcher and James Blackman. So you have 2 good quarterbacks that have potential. But, again, we saw the 2 quarterback system last year, and we have a new offensive coordinator. I mean, a new offensive a new coaching staff.
Right.
But that's not what people want. They want to hear, like, the new stuff. Maybe Tanner Mordecai at SMU, Grant Gunnell at Memphis maybe. I think Bailey Zappi is going to boom. I don't think there's any bust there at Western Kentucky, right? But yeah, so I might go with Grant Gunnell at Memphis. That might be a good one. Grant Gunnell at Memphis. Maybe Jaron Williams at South Florida. Can you see that really taking off? Yeah, that might be my best one. Jaron Williams at South Florida because he has the talent. The talent could take off, or it could be what it's been the past few years.
I will give you my 2. I was going to say Jaron Williams at USF. Let's see how that competition plays out. The other one that I'm very much keeping my eye on is Charlotte. I want to see. Listen, you and I are both Chris Reynolds fans. We've talked about him, as far as how he worked his way up on the depth chart. I think this is going to be interesting with James Foster. For whatever it's worth, Chris Reynolds is not quote unquote a Will Healy recruit. I'm not going to say Will Healy guy. So I think that's not a fair way of summarizing it when a guy's led you to a bowl game, right? But he's not a Will Healy recruit. He was brought in by the former coach right now, whose name has escaped me, former defensive coordinator Marshall, Brad Lambert. Right? Brad Lambert, the first ever coach at Charlotte. When you have someone like James Foster, who is clearly the more athletically gifted and physically gifted quarterback, I think it could get interesting. I'll put it to you that way, especially because so much of that team, when you change an offensive coordinator and whatnot, is really going to depend on the quarterback situation, how stable it is. Now, it helps having a guy like Vic Tucker, who, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen Victor Tucker play football, not the flashiest receiver, not the fastest, the crispest route runner. I mean, he just knows how to get open. So, that we'll have to see how that one plays out. But wanted to ask you that. Appreciate you indulging me on that question, Steve. Let's talk about a couple of guys really quickly here before we go ahead and close up this episode. The quarterbacks we're going to spotlight specifically, N'Kosi Perry, the former Miami quarterback. For those of you who may have seen him enter the transfer portal, withdraw, and enter again, that wasn't indecisiveness on his part. What actually happened was, those of you who may not be, Floridians, the value of a University of Miami degree, UM's a really regarded private school. And the reason he pulled from the transfer portal was because he intended to graduate. So, he just kind of pulled his name as a formality just to graduate from UM and then re-enter the transfer portal. It was pretty much known when he pulled his name that he was not going to stay. But someone who obviously got a lot of playing time throughout his career. What do you think about N'Kosi Perry? I mean, he was a big-time recruit as well when he got to UM.
Big-time recruit, and I think people probably forget how much playing time he had. He's had 27 total touchdowns. Then last year when King came in, it was just you're not getting playing time until King got hurt the last game. And I think, tell me if this is fair, because you're a Florida guy. I'm half a Florida guy, right? So we have our ears to that. In 2018, when he got the majority of playing time, I bet Miami fans thought they found their quarterback of the future, right?
Yes.
Like they were like, okay, this is the guy.
Steve, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
N'Kosi Perry, if my memory serves me correct, made his debut or got his first extended playing time 2018 FIU at Hard Rock Stadium. Come on, who was the kid who was there? Malik Rozier. Malik Rozier gets benched early on. Malik Rozier went the first 2 or 3 drives. N'Kosi Perry comes in and lights it up. The rest is history.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but go ahead.
No, you're good. No, because he the thing with him is he's been so inconsistent, right? He has like a completion percentage like 52, a career completion percentage or somewhere in that.
Correct.
Range. But he's taking care of the ball. And even the bowl game against Oklahoma State when King got hurt this year and he came in and played, they only lost by 3. Like he kept them in the game. So he's got potential. I think the inconsistency that kind of, set him back. And even when Jaron Williams started off in 2019, he still played a lot because Jaron Williams struggled. So, and he did some things well. So I think we've seen that he can be a good fit somewhere. He has the talent. It's just the consistent part of it. I think he could be a really good G5 fit somewhere, like a really good G5 fit somewhere.
Look at his numbers here: 24 touchdowns, 10 picks. Someone who, like you mentioned, protects the football really well. Had a pick against Clemson, but that's one pass. I don't remember offhand what pass that was. Could have been a Hail Mary for all we know. At halftime. Again here, looking at his numbers, 1 of 5 in the bowl game against Wisconsin. I don't believe he started. That one had a pick. And then 3 of 6. This is the game I believe he was benched. 3 of 6 against Virginia in 2018 with 2 picks. Outside of that, he's done a really good job protecting the football. And the FIU game I referenced was not his debut. He had made his debut against Savannah State week 1, but against his first D1 competition, 17 of 25, 224, 3 touchdowns and interception. So N'Kosi Perry, like you mentioned, someone who definitely could be a factor at the G5 level. We'll see how that plays out. Joe Milton, another Floridian from Olympia High School in Orlando, the west side of Orlando. Another big-time recruit, someone who, again, big guy, 6'5", 234. Have to see where he ends up getting to. Steve, first and foremost, G5 or P5? Putting you on the spot here. Where do you think he ends up?
G5.
P5? G5. Okay, all right. I had to put you on the spot there. Have at it with Joe Milton.
Yeah. So I think he's a Power 5 guy, but I think the fact that he started off from Michigan, struggled, and by the end of the year, it was benched for Cade McNamara. I forget the backup, but from Michigan took over. He's similar to Perry as far as a build. He's a little bit bigger, but big guy, big arm, decent athlete, but he's not going to blow anyone away with his speed. He wants to stand there and just kind of rip it. So I definitely think he's a G5 guy. I think he could be a good fit somewhere. And there's somewhere, I think there's several group of 5 schools still looking for guys. I mean, FIU probably would take one, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. FAU, maybe, I don't know. They probably have their quarterback of the future, but it's not like they were solid at quarterback last year. And so, with Joe Milton and N'Kosi Perry being a Florida guy, Milton being a Florida guy, even though he went to Michigan, like who knows where they could potentially end up. So I think we know more about Perry than there is about Milton.
Sure.
Milton is still, it's like, he's only had a few starts compared to Perry's had at least a season worth of starts if you combine the starts, right?
Yeah.
But I think good. He does have upside, so maybe a Power 5 will take him with the upside and being developed. But I think he go to a group of 5 and potentially start pretty quickly, depending where he goes.
Yeah, really quick, you talk about FAU. You look at the situation there. Michael Johnson Jr., the son of newly named offensive coordinator Michael Johnson, is at FAU. So to see how that plays out, obviously, coach's son, but that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to start. Willie Taggart Jr. is there at FAU. So, you definitely could be, an interesting situation where you have two sons of the primary offensive play callers on the team. But, it's an option. If you look at FAU, they definitely are a quarterback away. So it wouldn't shock me to see them say, hey, family ties aside, we got to win ball games. So they're in FIU as well. We know Butch Davis is high on some of the younger quarterbacks he has, but I still think they're going to bring in a veteran quarterback as well. We'll see how that goes. Of course, they still have Max Portenschlager as well. The last quarterback we're going to talk about here, a guy making the jump from G5 to P5, a guy who I didn't realize is this big.
Big, huh? Yeah.
Anthony Russo, 6'4", 240, going from Temple to Michigan State.
He's a big dude. Eric, do you remember the game he played against UCF? Was it 2 or 3 years ago? And it was like a 50-something, 40-something game.
Yeah.
Kinsey Milton going back and forth. That's the first time I was like, damn, Russo can play. Like he's a gunslinger, right? And so I think I got a few things for Russo. I think he is going to a situation where he can start Michigan State. The start at Michigan State last year transferred to Northern Illinois. Rocky Lombardi, what an epic name. But so he's gone. But quarterback position has struggled at Michigan State the past few years. What Russo brings is a lot of experience. He's a 3-year starter at Temple, over 6,000 yards passing, 51 total touchdowns. He has thrown a lot of interceptions, over 30 in his 3 seasons starting. So that's one thing. But at the same time, Temple needed him to take some risks. But my big takeaway is he's bringing experience that Michigan State doesn't have. We, of course, will be rooting for him, being G5 type of podcast and group, and now going to Power 5. We want him to go have success. Here's my head scratcher.
Sure.
He has a big arm, which you saw against UCF those few years ago when they were lining up the scoreboard. He has a big arm. He can push the ball downfield. But for whatever reason at Temple, they didn't do it often. They didn't do as much as I would like to see. He only, in his 3 years starting, only one of those years, his yards per attempt was over 7. That was in 2018. It was 7.4. So it wasn't even like it blew anyone off. It was just averages, right? So it was acceptable. Now, I don't know how much that has to do with the offense or how much that had to do with Anthony Russo. I'm not sure. But you would still like to see the ball be pushed downfield more. And here's another thing to add to the head scratcher. Michigan State as a team last year was averaged less than 7 yards per attempt in 2019. 2018, they averaged 5.7 yards per attempt. They have that kind of boring offense, that Big Ten offense, round it, pound it, try to complete a pass, pound it, try to complete a pass. So last year with a new coaching change, they improved a little bit. And so I think the idea is Russo can come in there, and even though he didn't push the ball downfield as much as he would probably have liked to at Temple, Michigan State is probably still banking on the fact that Russo has the tools to change that, to change Michigan State's offense and push the ball downfield a bit more. So I'm excited to see what happens. He has the talent. It's just how is he going to flow in that offense, and can Michigan State put him in a situation to succeed?
Yeah, really quick, just a big thing I remember about Anthony Russo at Temple was always seemed as if they were kind of putting him in that game manager role. Mm-hmm. And I think when you get cast in that role, maybe it kind of dilutes or, doesn't allow for your actual potential as a quarterback to shine through, right? Because once you're cast as a game manager, it's like, all right, he can't be the guy. He can't be the person who can sling it 60 times. I'm not saying Anthony Russo necessarily want him slinging it 60 times, but from your assessment, he's someone who can more than get the job done from the physical tool perspective.
It's a good point.
Absolutely. So with that being said, we want to thank you for listening. As always, you can find us on Twitter at QB Spotlight. You can find Steve on Twitter at Steven Hamner, Steven Hamner, Hamner. You can find me on Twitter at Eric C. Henry _ All the negative stuff, send my way. Steve is rather sensitive, and he's a new father, so he's probably running on lack of sleep. Again, as you can always find the podcast through Podbean. They upload to Apple iTunes. You can find it in various podcasting platforms. Again, sincerely, please reach out to us on Twitter. We welcome all feedback. Twitter, leave your reviews. It's the only way we can help this podcast grow. YouTube as well. Leave your, who you want to see on YouTube. Steve is doing an excellent job breaking down those guys. Spring football is right around the corner. Any topics you have, we won't just continue to do transfer portal quarterbacks. We'll get into quarterback battles. We'll get into, a litany of things. Probably do some draft stuff as the draft rolls around as well. So any topics, shoot them our way. We will be more than happy to address them. Thank you for listening. Spring football again is around the corner. Stay safe, everyone, and happy football watching.